Much like Who Was Prince explores the life of Prince and his influences, Remy Martin joins with international music star Usher in Team Up for Excellence, the film, exploring the history of music, culture, and cognac. See the film at teamupforexcellence.com. Remy Martin Cognac, 40% alcohol by volume, imported by Remy Cointreau, USA, New York, New York. Please drink responsibly.
This is
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
It's Thursday, folks. It's time for your favorite segment with the founder of the largest online progressive community, dailycoast.com. Also the founder of Civics with a Q, the online polling firm with a very representative, in fact, one of the most representative sample sizes. And then, of course, the brand new podcast and successful, popular itself, The Brief. Marcos Melitsas joins us now. How are you, buddy?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good to see you. Good to have you with us as always. I guess one of the biggest things that's going on right now, just in terms of visual, I'll get your response to that early. What's going on with Haitians at the border and people on horseback pushing back Haitians? That is not looking good for Biden or Harris right now. They've got to do something about that. And then, of course, once again, this country seems to get most riled up when Haitians try to come here. Other people come, people get upset about it, but it's like there's this obsession with Haitian people fleeing what we all know they're dealing with. That's been well reported on and trying to come here.
Yeah, I got to say the way Haitians have been treated right now is viscerally upsetting to me. It just cuts so deeply that I cannot believe that this is something that a Democratic administration would do. There's been a migration of Haitians from Latin America, Haitians that live in Latin America. They're being dumped in Haiti, where they don't even live and they're generationally haven't been, they speak Spanish, but because they're Black and Haitian, they're being shipped off without any kind of processing, without any hearing of any asylum claims, without anything like that. They're just being dumped off in Haiti where they don't know anything in the middle of what is basically the Somalia of our side of the world. There's no functioning government. Gangs and warlords run the country. It is a hellscape. And the Biden administration isn't just rounding these people. That was upsetting enough. And now we see the images of Border Patrol lassoing them, whipping them from horses. So
Sickening.
One thing that the Biden-Harris administration, I think, realizing is that we're not Republicans. We're not going to sit there and put up with idiocy and cruelty from our government because he's on our team.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice, Mark. We had a few months where we can actually be really happy, and and we said maybe if there's a reason to criticize Biden, we're going to criticize Biden just like we did when Obama was president. And here we go. Here's our up. And I'd rather not. I really would rather focus on how we can get voting rights reform passed and Build Back Better law passed with, over the obstructionism of Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. We got so many issues. And why, given the state of Haiti, we are more than capable as a country to welcome refugees. But yes, yeah. Why, Mark? Because they're Black. That's why.
That's right. Yeah.
That's it. I mean, there's nothing else. I mean, Latinos aren't treated, that much better. We see the right wing going crazy over Afghan refugees. So, but you're right. There's something viscerally crueler about the way Haitians are being treated. And I'm not surprised that America as a country is hostile because we know who we are now as a country. Like there's no illusions anymore. But I certainly expected better from a Biden-Harris administration.
Biden put this in the lap of the vice president in terms of dealing with the border crisis, which I would not have wanted that job. I don't think anybody would have. I mean, it's trying to fix something that continues to be broken for a long time. But I mean, it's perilous because here you have the first African-American vice president, and she has to deal with images like this. It's not a good look for her. It's not a good look for the administration. They've really got to figure out a way to get this together and resolve this. In the meantime, the progressives in the House, what are your thoughts about them? They're saying that they want the 3.5 trillion there in reconciliation. They're not going to compromise on that. Are they being unreasonable?
There's a game of chicken going on. And I mean, they're not being unreasonable. That was the deal. The deal was that the $1.5 trillion hard infrastructure bill would be passed concurrently with the Build Back Better human infrastructure bill. That was the deal. Now you have some House a-holes and you have Manchin and Sinema talking about, oh, it's too much money. They're not actually looking at specific programs. They think that it gives them credibility as centrists to be able to say, well, we just split the baby, right? They wanted 3.5 trillion. Republicans wanted 0, so let's make it 1.5. And boy, look at us. We're so common sense, problem solving, moderate. That's not really, nobody gives them credit for that. Nobody gives a damn. I mean, it's maybe the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times editorial boards will give them a pat in the back. But I mean, it's patently absurd. But there is a game of chicken, Mark, because Kyrsten Sinema has been running. We just found out she's been running the sort of shadow campaign with independent voters in Arizona. It turns out Arizona voters, if you're independent, you can pick your primary. So she has seemingly given up trying to win a primary with Democratic voters. She thinks she's going to do it with independent voters. I think she's off the rails. I mean, it's she's not popular with anybody right now. But we see that from her communication, her emails to independent voters, no party affiliation voters in Arizona, that she is taking credit for the $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill that she brought together Republicans and she's bragging about something that hasn't been passed. And so if she sinks the Build Back Better $3.5 trillion bill, she's also sinking her own major accomplishment, which is what she is already running on for her 2024 reelection. So there is a game of chicken. I mean, do progressives, it's the same old, choice that they've had to deal with in the past. Do we get nothing? Do we compromise? And there's a lot of good in both the hard infrastructure bill and even if we're talking about a $1.5 trillion Build Back Better scaled back bill, there's going to be a lot of good progressive priorities in there. That said, every time progressives cave, it sends a signal to those, quote, moderates that, you know what? They're going to cave anyway because we hold all the cards. And so I'm willing to play chicken because in the end, the person that's going to suffer the most is Joe Biden. Joe Biden comes from that tradition of the centrist, problem-solving left. Let him deal with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and any obstructionist Democrats in the House. Let him fix this because the progressive side of the aisle, they made a deal. Everybody agreed to this, including Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and everybody else. They agreed to that. Frickin' do the deal.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Biden priding himself on working across the aisle. Mm-hmm. I mean, the real aisle he's got to work across now is with these Democrats, with Manchin and Sinema.
Yeah, put it on him. Make him work.
Yeah, because it's still galling that their own personal political interests override the well-being of the country. And what Biden needs to recognize quickly, override the party too. Because again, if these things don't happen, then you don't have a Democratic Party in power, Marcos, in 2022. We will lose. It's going to be hard to continue to mobilize people under these circumstances. And maybe that's what maybe we need to recognize, maybe that's what they do. Is that what they want? Do they want the Democratic Party to lose? Is anything they would get if the Democrats lost the House and the Senate in 2022?
I mean, they could switch parties. I mean, it would be the end of Sinema's political career. I guess they could do that. The fact that Joe Manchin hasn't already actually says that he's really not a Republican. So he'd probably be more apt to retire. But yeah, they're not going to get anything. So just President Biden, just buy them off. Just ship off an extra couple $1 billion for coal miners and call it a day. The end of the story. Just freaking buy them up. Just shut them up so you have something to run on. Otherwise, so Pete DeFazio, he's a congressman from Oregon. He's the chair of the House Transportation Committee. He just did his whole tweet storm that was actually kind of telling. He's furious. He's furious at these quote, the mansions and for trying to renege. And he's pointing out that in the $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, there was a provision to help cities buy electric buses. Not only did that get stripped out by Joe Manchin and crew, but they actually added language that they had to use fossil fuel buses. So there is an undermining of this critical climate change agenda on behalf of fossil fuel interests. This is not because they're centrist. This is not because they're, we're gonna be moderates. We're not going to be crazy liberal. Nobody wants, other than oil barons, nobody wants more pollution spewing buses on city streets. Even if you didn't care about the politics, do you want the bus with a big black cloud of smoke behind it, or do you want the one that doesn't have a big black cloud of smoke? So a lot of the stuff was been, the electric buses, it's all being pulled back into the Build Back Better bill. So DeFazio is like, yeah, I'm not voting for the other bill because there's just no way I am going to actively harm the environment by supporting one over the other.
Even the big automakers in Detroit came out with Biden in support of everything being electric by what? Well, at least half of cars being electric by 2030. That's in 9 years, Marcos.
Yeah.
That's that's a shorter period of time. And you and I have been talking on the air together. So that's going to go like that. What are these people still holding on to? I mean, this is it. This is, so you want to prevent some electric buses?
Yeah. So, yeah. And this is where it's sad that West Virginia, which is one of the poorest states, had everything on a fossil fuel that destroyed its environment and killed its own people, black lung disease. Too bad. But okay, you know what? Throw a couple $1 billion at the freaking state, at those coal miners. There's like 10 times as many solar panel installers than there are coal miners at this point. I mean, this is not even an industry that matters in any economic sense. These people matter in a personal moral sense, right? They matter, but not in an economic sense. Why are we holding on to that?
How much coal is even still being mined these days?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to look at the numbers, but it's down dramatically. I mean, there is no market for coal. What's left of that market is going to China, and they're moving on, cleaning their air up too. So that market is pretty much dead. There's no reason for it. Nobody wants it. Yeah. For all the obvious reasons. And at this point, it's not even just that it's dirty and it's polluting and it causes horrible health problems. At this point, it literally is cheaper to have renewable energy power. If you look at wind, solar, hydro, and batteries, it's actually cheaper to generate that energy. You have to build out the infrastructure that's being done, but that's cheaper than. So there was a bunch of coal mines that were going to be coal-fueled electrical power plants. A bunch of them were going to be converted to clean coal, and then they realized the economics just weren't there. Aside from the fact that there's no such thing as clean coal. Even if there was, the economics of it just aren't there. So they converted to natural gas, which is not great, but it's a heck of a lot better than coal and a lot cheaper for those conversions. So there's no market. I mean, Wyoming passed a law where they have a fund to sue power plant operators who convert away from coal. I mean, this is. I mean, it's ludicrous on its face. The idea that a power plant operator can't decide what fuel to use, and I mean, it's just stupid. But this is how desperate they are to cling to an industry that's dead. It's dead.
There are. I'm just looking up as we're talking. It looks like there are about 551 coal mines left in the United States.
Yeah, if you look at the number of coal miners, I think we're down to like 40,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, of course, there's in industry isn't just the coal miners, it's the people that supply the equipment, it's the people that, the diners in those towns. There's an ecosystem around it, obviously. But this is where just pay these people. Just literally just helicopter in money. Just, pay them $100,000 a year. They can sit on their asses. I don't care.
Yeah.
That would be a better investment if you can get the rest of this bill passed.
Right.
And that would be a better investment for our climate than try to subsidize and force private businesses to continue using polluting, dirty fuels.
Who would be against that? Wonder how much money they make now. I'm sure it's not much more than $100,000 a year, if that.
Oh no, I don't make a lot of money.
But whatever.
But you know what? And I mean, I someday, if you want to really get into this topic, and it's an absolutely fascinating topic, it's one of my writers, Mark Sumner, he's a scientist and he's an expert on pretty much everything. He worked for a coal company, and so he knows that world intimately. And if you wonder why these people do a job that is as horrifying as coal mining is, right? You're going down into it's dangerous. It's dirty. People die of black lung disease in their 40s and 50s. I mean, this is not, and it's a horrible, painful death. Why do they do this? And Mark says that they built this entire propaganda around it. Like, you are keeping America moving. It is your work that keeps the lights on, that keeps industry humming. And so they truly believe in their job, not as I'm doing a job, like what a shitty job. No, they for them, it's almost ideological. Yeah. They are what keeps America humming. And that's how they've been sort of propagandized into continuing to fight for a job whose time is long past. And really, nobody should be doing it.
It's romanticized. Loretta Lynn, all of that. I'm sure they get caught up in it. I know you said that, and that ought to be the case. And I would support that. I think many would support that. But so help our audience understand, because I know it gets a little complicated, and I know it, but then I don't always remember the best way to articulate it. How does reconciliation actually work?
So reconciliation is all these parliamentary maneuvers are almost like accidents of procedure, right? None of this stuff was like actually, the filibuster wasn't a conscious effort to protect minority rights. It was an accidental parliamentary maneuver that was in the books that somebody realized could be used to obstruct, and that's how it became this big obstructionist machine, right? Nobody invented filibuster as an actual rule of the Senate. And the budget reconciliation sort of falls in that bucket, where it was, for whatever historical reason, if a bill has X budgetary impact, and it has to be neutral, so you can't have new taxes, it has to be revenue neutral. If you have certain conditions, then it bypasses the filibuster. Again, nobody mapped this out. Nobody created or carved out an exception to the filibuster. It just, somebody figured out, oh, you're going to use weird parliamentary trickery to have a filibuster. Well, if you dig into Mark, it's far beyond my level of expertise in parliamentary procedures in the rules of the Senate, but somebody found out this exception to the rule. And historically, it's only been used, I think, once or twice a term. Suddenly this year, Democrats magically discovered that you could do it a third time. Now, I don't know if that's actually somewhere in the rules or they just declared it, but you still have this sort of budgetary impact rule. And this is where bringing in the parliamentarian can come in and say, well, that doesn't meet the rules, the definition of budget reconciliation. Now, this same parliamentarian said that the Trump tax cuts, which generated trillions of dollars of debt, could be passed under the rules of budget reconciliation. Remember, it's supposed to be revenue neutral.
Right.
There was no analysis of the tax cuts, credible analysis. I'm not talking Mitch McConnell's BS, right? There was no credible analysis that said this was going to be revenue neutral. But but the Republicans pretended that it would be, and there's a parliamentarian. So the parliamentarian has been very generous with Republicans. She's been very hostile to Democrats. She should be fired because Democrats can even ignore her. There's nothing saying the Democrats run the joint. They can overturn any rule. The problem is Joe Manchin's going to be there being like, I think Joe Manchin's hiding behind a parliamentarian as a way to try to block as much of the agenda as possible. This is why next year is so important, Mark. Yeah. And I know we say it every year, but
every year it's like the most important election of our lives. And then,
but it is.
It still is. It is. Everyone is. Everyone is.
I know it's frustrating and it's exhausting. And wouldn't it be nice to just be able to like chill for a couple of years? Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Chill out.
They don't chill, and we need two people. We need a +2, even a +1. No, they still Manchin cinema. +2, like we need to render them irrelevant, and we need a +2 in a very tough map.
So to be clear, I'm going to go to the +2, but to be clear, the Democrats can replace the parliamentarian.
Yeah.
Who decides that? Because they're the party in power.
Chuck Schumer can fire her.
He won't do it because
who the hell? Because oh my God, maybe Republicans might say something mean about it. I don't know. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about this stuff. They think people care. They don't.
More MIP after this message.
Remy Martin joins with international music star Usher in Team Up for Excellence, the film, exploring the history of music, culture, and cognac, from blues to hip-hop, swing dancing to breakdancing. Usher and Remy Martin traveled through the decades in France and the U.S., honoring cultural figures, both rooted in a shared philosophy of aiming for the stars. See the film at teamupforexcellence.com. Remy Martin Cognac, 40% alcohol by volume, imported by Remy Cointreau, USA, New York, New York. Please drink responsibly.
This episode is brought to you by HP. Whenever you do your best thinking, the HP Spectre X360 is ready when inspiration strikes. With power save for battery life and focus mode to multitask, you can do your best thinking whenever and wherever it happens. You can't always schedule when and where you might have a brilliant thought, whether it's in the morning or before bed, when you're at your computer or away from it. Thinking can happen anywhere and anytime. The HP Spectre X360 2-in-1 convertible PC with Windows 10 saves battery life for whenever an idea hits you. HP Spectre X360, a more thoughtful laptop.
So where are...
Did people even know there was a parliamentarian until about 10 minutes ago?
No. Well, they definitely didn't know. I think most people heard about it, during Trump and the tax cuts. It wasn't like something that was foremost. That's when people, and it was all this new. What is a parliamentarian? What can a parliamentarian do? The parliamentarian has been more in the news in the past few years than at any time in my lifetime. And there's always been a parliamentarian.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the +2, at this hour, where do you see that +2 being most likely to come from?
It's a tough map. We have to defend Mark Kelly and Raphael Warnock in Arizona and Georgia, respectively. They won special elections, so now they're going for their full term.
Okay.
We have to defend Nevada, which was another very close state in 2020. So we have three, and even New Hampshire might be competitive. I'm hoping it's not, but there's a possibility New Hampshire is competitive. On the other hand, our opportunities are, and these states are going to be very familiar. They are in Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. We have outside chances in Iowa and Ohio. I don't really think we do. I think those states are gone. They're too white, too rural. But Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, all of these states are the exact same states we had to fight for in 2020. Right. And these were all Wisconsin was a 0.5 point victory. Right. Pennsylvania was a 3-point was it 3 points? It's about 3-point Democratic victory. North Carolina was a 3-point Republican victory. Florida was a 3-point Republican victory. These are all razor thin states in and off year election where Democratic performance typically suffers. So it is going to be challenging just to even hold our 50-seat majority. much less gain it. Now we can. The seats are there to pick up. So this is going to be very critical to keep people motivated, and having, Joe Biden's border patrol whipping Haitians on the border doesn't exactly really motivate people, and having Joe Manchin obstruct Joe Biden's own agenda doesn't get people motivated. So there's a lot of challenges we need to get there. But on the other hand, Republicans are doing everything they can to try to get our side out, right? Donald Trump is sticking his nose and raising his profile. Abortion is going to be on the ballot in every single one of these states. Because this is now a state level battle, and it's even a battle for the Supreme Court, our ability to expand that Supreme Court and rectify the shenanigans of Republicans in the last few years. So the Supreme Court's going to probably have a ruling on the Mississippi law sometime that summer, right before the election. I have a feeling that the Texas law is not going to survive, but this Mississippi thing, I'm almost guaranteed the thing's going to pass.
You think the Supreme Court will overturn Texas?
I think the law is so ludicrous. And right now, the two people that are suing this one brave doctor who's challenging the law, even the Right to Life crowd is whining about the about the plaintiffs. See, one guy is a guy in Illinois who says he's pro-choice, and he's actually suing for the $10,000 in order to help get the law invalidated. The other guy is a self-described disgraced former litigator who is in house arrest for like 10 years, who wants the cash. And I know that the anti-abortion crowd's like, they're not even doing it for life. Like, no, you $10,000 bounty, nobody's doing this crap for life, right? They're doing it for the, and that's how the law was built. So I think the abortion part of it is gonna be ignored for the whole, vigilante spy on your neighbors side of things, because it's pretty gross. But by not blocking the law outright, I think the Supreme Court sort of signaled that it's ready to make abortion illegal to any state that wants to. So this is going to be on the issue. I mean, Texas doesn't have a Senate seat, but Texas has the governor's race and all the top of the, attorney general, those races. And they have the state legislature is going to be, we don't have new lines, but it'll probably be, somewhat in play. So there is a universe where if our people turn out in Texas and we can take control of state legislature, then we can turn things back, make abortion legal in Texas again. Doesn't fix true red states, the Idahos and Wyomings, but this is now a real battle. It's an existential battle for a woman's right to choose. And their people will always turn out and vote, right? The anti-abortion crowd, they vote like nobody else. They're some of the most reliable voters year after year. That's why Republicans have always catered to them so consistently. Our people, that are interested in these issues are younger, like unmarried women. These are not reliable, consistent voters. Republicans are doing everything they can to mobilize and motivate these people to vote against them. So they're doing what they can to help us out, but we also need to do stuff to help ourselves. And so I'm not feeling, right now, if I had to guess, I might even just guess status quo. We end up with 50-50 Senate, another 2 years of Manchin and cinema hell. But I'm hoping. And the other factor, Mark, is that Trump is doing a really good job of lining up really crappy Senate candidates. Because the number one rule is, do you kiss his ring, right? It's not, are they electable? Do we have, so, Herschel Walker in Georgia, that's a gift. He's back, he's back in his right-wing congressman in Pennsylvania. There's still going to be a primary. They didn't clear the field, but makes it a lot easier to run against the ultra-right wackos than it is somebody who would be more reasonable. And you have Dean Heller, who's former senator in Nevada, now running for governor. He can't even, this guy's supposed to be a moderate. He can't even say that Joe Biden is president. He was asked at the press conference announcing his candidacy this week if he accepted that Joe Biden is the president of the United States. And his response is, I know who the president is. And they're like, yeah, but is it Joe Biden? I know who the president is.
Just can't even say it out loud.
No, because that way they can go to Donald Trump and say, "Oh, you're obviously the president. I know who the president is," but he can't say it. He's afraid of that video clip that'll be circulated amongst the Trumpkins.
Right. Can't say it out loud.
Yeah.
Amazing. More MIP after this message.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football is back, and the best bet you can make is downloading the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It doesn't matter if you're new to gambling or an old pro, FanDuel has something for everyone. And as an official sports betting partner of the NFL, you know your bets are safe. There's also never been a better time to use FanDuel, because right now, you'll get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. You can even turn a small wager into a big payday with a same-game parlay bet. Just sign up with the promo code Spotify to place your first bet risk-free on FanDuel Sportsbook. Download FanDuel today. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. This episode is brought to you by ABC. Get ready for sparks to fly during the epic Station 19 Grey's Anatomy crossover premiere event. All your burning questions will be answered, like who will be the new captain of Station 19? And now that Meredith survived, what's next for her? Brace yourself for one hell of a return and a surprise guest on Grey's you never saw coming. Don't miss the Station 19 Grey's Anatomy crossover premiere event Thursday, September 30th on ABC, and stream it on Hulu.
Lastly, there are some Democrats who are under the impression that what Manchin and Sinema are doing are going to have the opposite effect that voting rights organizations and voter mobilization organizations are saying. They said they're actually going to inspire that base you're talking about, our voters who may not always be reliable. They're going to definitely come out and vote because of Manchin and Sinema's behavior. But I think that's a very risky bet.
I would not make that bet. I don't think people really are that plugged in. Now, it does make me wonder if running against them in 2022 next year might not be a bad strategy to mobilize sort of people who are kind of paying attention. Sinema in particular has gotten a lot of negative press, and instead of running against Mitch McConnell, maybe we run against Kirsten Sinema. That's actually a very interesting. Because remember, Mark, the game isn't persuasion, and especially not in the mid-year. Nobody needs to be convinced whether they're Republican or Democrat. Everybody knows we're so polarized right now. Everybody has a team. Even if it's a loose affiliation, they have a affiliation. Independents pick one side or the other. A Bernie socialist is probably going to vote Democratic, and a Tea Party Republican is probably going to vote Republican. They both consider themselves independents. They're really not. They're just not members of one of the two parties.
Right.
So the game is, how do you get your supporters to vote? And we just saw this in the California recall, where there was all these polls saying, oh, well, Gavin Newsom has a chance of losing. And in our own civics polling, the numbers literally never budged from day one to election day. And we nailed it on the dot.
Yeah.
Our civics numbers, we nailed it. It never moved. I'm not saying it, up a degree or 1 point or two. No, it was like the most perfect horizontal line. And we poll daily. Yeah, so it's a daily it was a daily tracking poll. So minds were made up on the recall. The question mark was, are Democrats going to vote? That was the big hope for the Republicans, right? It wasn't that they were going to convince people that Gavin Newsom was bad. It was hoping that Gavin Newsom supporters would not vote and that their supporters would vote. In the end, it turns out that Gavin Newsom did even better in the recall than he did in his 2018 race. So it blew up big time in the Republicans' face. But it's the same thing next year. It's not going to be about, do we convince them? It's how do we motivate our crew to turn out and vote? And that's why some people say, well, you have to deliver for them. And some other people say, no, you got to point to Donald Trump and scare them in abortion rights. You got to scare them into voting. And the right answer is obviously you do both. You make a positive case and you make a negative case, positive for the Democrats, negative for the Republicans, and you try to motivate. But I do wonder, now that you bring up, Kirsten Sinema, I wonder if there's a way to motivate some of our voters to vote, not because Democrats or Republicans are bad and, they roll their eyes because they've heard it a million times, but because like make Kirsten Sinema irrelevant.
Right. We need real Democrats.
Yeah, probably not. I doubt it would move a lot of people, but it's still fun to think about.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's becoming, people who normally don't pay attention to these kinds of things are noticing more and more that they are the sources of the obstruction. I mean, it's kind of hard because people say, well, what's going on? Why isn't this happening? It's because of the two of them. So I don't know.
Yeah, and that's important because there's still a lot of like, oh, the Democrats can't get anything done. And it's like, you know what? There's a lot of Democrats. Two of them are blocking everything. It's not the Democrats. It's Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. And so it's really frustrating because it does what they're doing with their obstructionism is they are reinforcing a lot of anti-Democratic Party tropes. Right. And because people don't, they're not paying that close attention. They just see that everything's gridlocked again, even though Democrats have the majority. They don't know that the majority is 50-50. They don't know that there's a filibuster. They don't know that, Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema are literally the only holdouts. They think Democrats are in power and they can't get anything done.
Right. And it feeds, speaking of tropes, the Dems and disarray trope. Mm-hmm. And that is the narrative that the Beltway media is still pushing.
No, they love it.
They love it. And so here's the conflict. You had conflict with Trump. They like conflict in their media coverage. Trump's gone, so you have to create another conflict. And it's Democrats in general, not just those two. They don't single out those two. They single out the whole Democratic Party.
Democratic infighting. It's literally in the Senate. It's 48 versus 2. Yeah. This is not a even equal fight, other than the fact that those two are the margin of victory. Right. And that's why plus two next year. I would love, let's pick up the open seat in Pennsylvania. I'm feeling good about that one. Let's get rid of Ron Johnson. Oh my God, that would be great. We still don't even know if he's going to run again. I don't think he's feeling confident right now. And then if we hold all our other seats, that's our plus 2. North Carolina, it's a tough state, slight Republican lean. Florida always breaks her heart. Yeah. God, I love Val Demings. She would be the best. Florida always breaks her heart. I am going to fight hard. I am going to hope for the best. I am not going to depend on Florida for any margin. And what was the Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, I think are our two biggest chances. We have to hold Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. And then if we're lucky and there's a bit of a wave, then maybe North Carolina and Florida come our way.
If any personality can motivate people, though, and that's the big if, it is Val.
I adore her.
Yeah,
she's gonna raise so much money. It's not gonna be a money issue. It's gonna be, can she get our vote to turn out? Is the Trump vote gonna turn out again? They didn't in 2018, but they turned out in 2020. Are Cubans in Miami going to continue with the Republicans? They really responded well to Donald Trump's socialism message. Right. And so they swung hard Republican when they had been trending a little bit in our direction. It's a challenging state. But on the other hand, and this is as gruesome as this is, it's the reality is that 2,500 Floridians are dying every week because of COVID. And the vast majority of those are in red counties. Ron DeSantis is literally killing his own supporters in order to beef up his bona fides for the 2024 presidential election. So we're talking, he's at around 50,000 dead Floridians and counting. The rate doesn't seem to be dropping. It is mostly them. And we lost a Senate race in 2018 in Florida by 10,000 votes. We lost the governor's race. Ron DeSantis won in 2018 by 30,000 votes. They are, and of course, famously, George Bush won in 2000 because they stopped the counting with 536 votes. Right. So this is a state where the margin of victory is rarely, significant. It is Florida. And there's a very strong possibility next year that a lot of these tight races fall within the margin of the death toll of COVID. And so you think they'd be motivated to get vaccinated to stop that, but nope.
So, so I guess the question then we'd have to examine more closely is the death toll, which side, Democrats or Republicans, are being most impacted by the death toll? it's probably too early to figure that out, but
I mean, early on, it was us. Early on, because it impacted the Black and brown communities and the Northeast. But now, a lot of those early states, New Jersey, New York, they're solidly Democratic states, right? So electorally, it doesn't really have much of an impact. But it's now hitting rural areas. It's hitting southern states, Republican-led states, Texas, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. It is mostly rural areas.
right.
And so there is a dramatic difference now between the most Trumpiest of counties versus Democratic counties. It is massive. And it's particularly shocking because our people live in cities. We're all packed in together. And there are people live out in, the country, rural areas where they have plenty of space between them. And yet somehow they've managed to create a pandemic of the unvaccinated, which is mostly Republicans at this point. And you'd think that they'd be motivated. Like, I want them to vaccinate. I want this nightmare to frickin' end, Mark.
Yeah, of course.
I want to beat them fair and square. But I'm kind of hoping that maybe if we point out that they're killing their own supporters, that they might say oh, good point. Everybody, please vaccinate.
I doubt it. They wouldn't acknowledge prior to 2020, they voted more with mail-in ballots. Now they're trying to stop that. They literally cutting themselves off. Republicans use mail-in ballots. We didn't.
In Florida, yeah.
Well, I mean, in most places, mail-in ballots were not the thing. Then we figured out mail-in ballots. Now they're trying to stop them. So, they're not going to do anything on their own behalf. We know that. Well, folks, as always, we know what we're up against. Marcos reminds us and motivates us. Folks, stay motivated. dailycoach.com, civics with a Q.com. Also, download the podcast, The Brief, wherever you get your podcast. This week, a conversation on California, the recall, and what that all means. So be sure to check it out. Marcos, as always, thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much. Stay safe. Everybody, please stay safe.
Yes, sir. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.
Remy Martin joins with international music star Usher in Team Up for Excellence, the film, exploring the history of music, culture, and cognac, from blues to hip-hop, swing dancing to breakdancing. Usher and Remy Martin travel through the decades in France and the U.S., honoring cultural figures, both rooted in a shared philosophy of aiming for the stars. See the film at teamupforexcellence.com. Remy Martin Cognac, 40% alcohol by volume, imported by Remy Cointreau, USA, New York, New York. Please drink responsibly.